Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Progression to Analog. Today we're here with Steve Rathje. Steve, so excited to have you.
It's good to be here.
The first person to be on the podcast twice.
It's an honor to be your first repeat guest.
The last time you were here, we spoke about the psychology of virality. So let's give our audience a little bit of a background on that topic and your area of expertise in it.
Yeah, I would say so broadly, I study the psychology of technology. I'm an incoming assistant professor of human computer interaction at Carnegie Mellon
Very
University.
exciting.
I'm super excited. I start this fall. I'm going to move to Pittsburgh this summer. Currently, I'm finishing my postdoc in psychology at New York University. I got a PhD in psychology at the University of Cambridge, my undergrad in psychology at Stanford. So I've been studying psychology for around the past 10 years. And what I'm really interested in is just broadly the psychology of technology.
Yep.
When I go to Carnegie Mellon, my lab is going to be called the Psychology of Technology
Ooh,
Lab.
very exciting.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm very excited to start my own lab after
Yeah.
being the member of several psychology labs. So
Yeah.
it's exciting to move to that next phase. So broadly, I study basically the impact of emerging technologies, including social media as well as AI, on a number of psychological phenomena. I previously studied the impact of social media on polarization. Now, a lot of what I study is the impact of AI on psychological variables such as mental health, attitude extremity, etc. And so when I was here last time, which was almost a year ago, it's been
Yeah,
around a year
yeah.
since we last talked. I just came out with a paper called The Psychology of Virality, which was a review paper around. It integrated a lot of literature on what goes viral on social media. So throughout grad school, I conducted a number of studies about what goes viral on social media, and it also integrated that with classic literature about what is likely to go viral off social media in offline conversations like via gossip.
Interesting.
And what we found in this review paper broadly is unsurprisingly, outrage, negativity,
Yeah.
extremism, anger, polarization, all these things that we don't think should go viral do go viral on social media, but that tends to be true offline as well.
Yeah, that's a good
Gossip
point.
is often negative, it's moralized, we're talking about people that we dislike. So the same things that go viral online are similar to what goes viral offline, and this is probably because of basic psychological processes. Like humans have a known negativity bias. They're drawn to negative information, and this was probably important for our survival. We had to pay attention to threats. It's like the sort of snake in the grass phenomena. You have to pay attention to a threat in your environment, and for that same reason, negativity seems to go viral on social media, and social media companies seem to take advantage of our attraction to negativity, outrage, polarization, etc.
And the more that social media platforms become a source of entertainment for us, the more that we
Right.
view these as cinematic pieces of the everyday. And in those cinematic
Right.
pieces, we want tension. We want something to work with. We don't just want something that's happy, or it makes it easier to share the information if it's something that has a tension to it, which oftentimes is something negative or something outrageous
Right.
or something crazy.
Yeah, and you see that in fictional stories as
Yeah.
well. Like you need a conflict in a story for the story to be interesting, and at the same time, news is really only interesting if it's negative. But social media companies seem to take advantage of this to a degree that we don't want. When you actually survey people and ask them, what do you think should go viral on social media, as opposed to what actually does go viral, people say they think that educational content, positivity, nuanced content should all go viral on social media,
Yeah.
yet they are aware that this content doesn't go viral on social
it's so
media.
true, and I've tested this myself. So I recently went on a walk without a phone outside of my apartment, and I live near the 9/11 memorial. I walked past it,
Right.
and there was this family that was doing this very weird, inappropriate photo shoot there. And they asked me to take a picture of them, and I said no. And I went back, and I was just thinking about Byung-Chul Han and his work on the smartphone tourist, and how a lot of things are just captured and we don't sit in the meaning of a place, and how, the 9/11 memorial is not designed to be this very fun place. It's
Right.
where the horrible event took place. There should be some level of thought behind it. And I posted a video, and immediately that video picked up because I said what you shouldn't do when you go to New York.
Oh,
Now,
okay.
Instagram
Yeah.
picked up my voice as a copyrighted sound for whatever reason. So the video's
Oh,
sound got taken
uh-huh.
down, and then I had to archive the video because I couldn't replace the sound.
Yeah.
But it's just very interesting because framing it like that, doing it around 30 seconds, and then not getting to the real point until the end, and doing,
Right.
putting photos all over it, 100% of people watch the whole video.
Wow.
I'm like, if
That's
if,
crazy.
if 100% of people would just watch a video on a normal educational topic, we probably
Yeah.
wouldn't be in this. And it created some conflict because people were debating whether they think, 90% of the comments said that's inappropriate of the family to do. And 10% of people
Yeah.
were like, well, we should be able to do anything wherever we want. And people were arguing, and those arguments, the algorithm picks up on that.
Yeah.
It's crazy though.
That's so funny. Yeah. That reminds me, it's kind of interesting because we have this tension because we're both sort of like educational content creators. We have this tension where we like know what succeeds on social media, and it is that like clickbaity stuff. It is, and you have to use like hooks. You have to use things to keep people engaged, but at the same time, you don't want to lean too much into those things to the point where you're like, getting in fights with people or just posting outrage to go viral.
Yeah.
But that reminds me, one of my most viral videos on TikTok, it was back when I was 26. It was sort of early in my like TikTok world. I was a PhD student, and I got this comment. It was quite funny. The comment was, "Oh, look, it's a teenager pretending to be a psychology researcher on TikTok," which was funny because I was 26. I was getting my PhD, and I did a reply to that comment. Where I was talking about, my actual credentials, where I got like, my education, how I'm not a teenager pretending to be a psychology researcher. And then I didn't reveal my actual age until like the end of the video. And I think that's what got like more than 2 million people to watch it. Yeah. So it's like, we have to be aware of these tricks, but we can't take advantage of them too much. But at the same time, if we don't take advantage of these tricks that keep people engaged, we don't have engaging hooks, then we'll never go viral, and people who are like just posting like slop on the internet will go viral. So it's a very tricky balance when you're an educational content creator and your number one goal is like accuracy and nuance and education in a world where educational content doesn't go viral, and you have to do all these things, and you can't lean too much into the like toxic incentive structure of social media.
Definitely. And so you went from studying the psychology of virality to now a lot on AI sycophancy.
Yeah.
So tell me about that.
I think it was like a very natural progression. So my perspective on like virality and social media all comes from like basically a very basic interest in like human psychology. A lot of my early work on what goes viral on social media was inspired by what's known as social identity theory in psychology, which is the idea that we sort of are drawn to various identities, whether they're like political identities, other identities, sports teams, all sorts of identities, because they give us sort of a sense of meaning and purpose and self-esteem. And people naturally, they love to praise their in-group and they love to derogate their out-group. And that's a very sort of ancient part of human psychology. And it probably evolved because, we evolved in these like small communities where it was very important to be loyal to our in-group and distrustful of our out-group. And I took that like theoretical perspective and I applied it to social media, and I looked at like people's conversations about in-groups and out-groups, and one went viral on social media. And of course, the result of this study is that out-group animosity went extremely viral on social media. There were a number of follow-up studies, interestingly, that also showed that just identity-related content in general, whether content that's about gender, sexual, racial identities, tends to go viral on all sorts of platforms like Facebook. And even like on TikTok, you can see that like content appealing to very like niche identities and very like niche communities, whether it could be like fandom communities, like communities surrounding like a specific meme or a specific pop star. People love feeling like a part of a group, and that goes viral on social media. So I took sort of my interest in sort of human psychology, and I began to apply that to AI. And I think the psychology of virality also applies well to AI sycophancy. I was having a conversation, I did an interview with Tristan Harris, who talks a lot. He was from the Netflix documentary The Social Dilemma, and he talks a lot about AI nowadays.
Center for Humane Technology.
He works for the nonprofit, the Center for Humane Technology, and that's good on you to remember that. And he said something pretty compelling to me, which is that basically social media is it's competing for our attention, whereas AI, it's competing for our attachment. The way it sort of draws us in is it tries to form a relationship with us. And it's interesting to think of the question of like what goes viral on social media versus what brings us in on when we're using chatbots, when we're using ChatGPT. And it's actually quite different because it's there have been analyses showing that it's not necessarily like outrage or negativity that keeps us engaging with ChatGPT and various chatbots. It's something very different. It tends to be what's termed sycophancy, when AI chatbots are overly flattering and agreeable. It's probably because of there's a psychological phenomena. It was coined in the 1970s by psychologist Lee Ross, and it's called naive realism. It's this idea that we tend to think that our perspective of reality is objective and correct, and anyone who disagrees with us is just like, they're wrong, they're biased, they're inobjective. We are objective and correct. So if we're engaging with an AI system that's like, you're great, I totally agree with you, you're amazing, we're like, wow, this AI chatbot is right. And I have some recent data. I can talk a little bit about a series of experiments I conducted about the consequences of interacting with sycophantic chatbots.
What were some of the things that you found? Because I notice with people that sometimes they avoid some human conversations because they just want to be validated through AI. So instead of having the difficult conversation with someone and asking them for something, they just want something easy and something quick. So what are some of the downstream effects of that? What did you find?
Yeah, that's interesting. And that speaks to the point of like, friction. AI is something where it doesn't like have any friction. You can use it easily. There was recently another team of academics, this wasn't a study conducted by me, found that when you repeatedly engage with sycophantic AI, you view your offline human relationships as less satisfying. And that's a danger of AI.
That is true.
Because, basically because like AI can do things that other people can't. It's always on. It's like, it's way nicer to us. It's become like a completely like polarized issue around use of AI. I've seen so many people who say like, I'm anti-AI, which I think is really interesting because my perspective on AI is like, it has, as a technology, it does a lot of good things and it has a lot of bad things. The same with social media. Social media can connect us, it can polarize us. AI can flatter us when we don't deserve to be flattered, but it can also, you know, for coding, for instance, like Claude Code is this amazing technology that's able to like advance software development, make parts of our lives easier. But I agree that I think it's become very polarized, and like people who are, I think the Silicon Valley is like a different world right now. And I've always kind of seen this when I like, you know, went to Stanford as an undergrad, and it was very tech forward. And now I'm going to CMU, which is going to be like a very tech forward place. I think it's interesting, but I think it would be interesting to explore like the downstream consequences of like overuse of AI and like what happens with these people who don't trust their own intuition anymore and go to ChatGPT and go to Claude to seek certainty. And
to seek certainty, that's a good.
I'm finding that now that like a lot of people, when they're like, they don't trust their gut anymore. There are things that can make good decisions on, but then there are things where it will just make you like, it will just reaffirm what you already know, or it will just provide some certainty when you don't have certainty.
Trip planning is a great example of this. So I think it can be useful for, if you're doing a road trip, trying to find what could be the most scenic route, what you like in a route, and where you should maybe, how you should orient it. But the stops along the way piece and exactly what you should do, getting that just generated from ChatGPT or from Claude or from another LLM feels weird to me, because I think that a lot of the ways that you figure out what's great are from human recommendations or from blogs or videos. And it is easy to do that. But I then wonder, is it going to flatten trips and vacations even more, and spontaneity in that realm even more so than Google Maps did? Because it's going to spit out a lot of the same things and a lot of the same types of recommendations. And recently one of my friends was showing me a Claude outline for a trip, and a lot of it was good, but I was saying, oh, maybe switch this place because I know the area very well, and add this place. And I think that's where, when I was doing this road trip from LA to Death Valley and then to Vegas, I used AI to figure out what route I wanted to take, because I wanted it to be scenic. But then for other things, I watched a lot of really random YouTube videos with like a low amount of views. I searched a lot on TikTok, I read blogs, and I put that all together to make the thing. So I think that there is an argument for the efficiency piece, but then
Right.
the pieces outside of it, I just worry that it's flattening things. And so what are some of the things that you found in your
like
data?
a little bit of friction,
Yeah,
basically.
yeah.
And I think what you're doing with like progression to analog is going to become more and more important as like especially as like social media gets filled with like AI and AI slop. I get so exhausted when I scroll through like LinkedIn and Twitter, and so many posts are like AI generated, and now I don't like,
so annoying.
I don't trust written text anymore.
I know, and that's
the
what's
thing.
becoming very dangerous. And I also think that what I don't want is, I don't want this thinking about analog as a form of progress to just be this thing that people are paying for. They're like, oh, let me buy this product or let me do this thing. It really should be a way to take time away from all these tools that take up so much of our time, and to think and to not be trying to buy something or trying to have some quick fix. It should be, okay, how can I go on a derive and explore without presupposed notions and get in touch with my urban environment? Or how can I have a conversation that I can get lost in and not be looking at my phone?
Exactly.
Things like that.
Yeah.
But I worry that sometimes just every inch of our day is pre-planned and pre-scheduled, and it doesn't allow room for deeper levels of thought. And also, from a workplace perspective, this AI sycophancy is very interesting, because most of the times, if you're in a remote workplace, you're just asking Claude or whatever your internal AI system is for things, which is great in some capacities. But then also, someone made the point to me recently that in their workplace, they feel like there's no choice but to use AI, because their boss will run any of their outputs through their internal AI system.
Oh my God.
And so then they'll just spit out, say, an 8-page document, and these long documents that just have no point to them. They're so everything's circular. And then it's, okay, we're optimizing text for this, running it through. And then if there are some things that maybe a human would catch where the AI wouldn't, what is that doing? And then also the capacity for people. Like, people are expected to now work 25 to 50% more on a day-to-day basis. So they're not maybe catching some of the smaller things. Now, there's some great applications of it, being able to build some things that you may never have been able to do. But how do we strike that balance? I think, especially with the sycophancy thing, is concerning when it comes to higher level outputs within an organizational behavior context, because
I have so many thoughts about that. I think in terms of like the job market, applying to things, applying to grants, what you're speaking to about how things are becoming evaluated with AI, there are a number of studies showing that there's like, AI has a bias toward AI written text, which is like crazy. AI has in-group bias. AI likes AI written text better. So humans might think this sounds like AI slop, but ChatGPT will be like, oh, I love this like ChatGPT written text. So there have been studies like, for instance, with like job applications, when like an AI judge reads an AI generated job application, it will say this application is better. So when you are now applying for jobs, I'm an academic, so I apply for grants all the time. Tons of grants are being AI generated. They're probably now being AI evaluated, or at least some of them are being AI evaluated. It's hard to, you might be like, oh, I don't want to use AI because, you know, my own writing is necessary. But if your work is going to be judged by AI, you're going to have a pressure to use AI so your work is like judged positively. And then what kind of world are we living in if we're just like constantly producing AI content that's going to be judged by AI judges? And then like where is the human in all of this? It's all just like AI agents interacting with each other.
That's exactly. And someone recently said to me that they're using Claude to answer all their emails, and I'm like, well, then what are we? Because I get so many emails on a daily basis that I know were written by an agent, that I know and I'm ignoring them. And even recently in looking for apartments, we decided to stay in our unit for now, but just looking at some apartments, so many AI agents, I'm like, not helpful. I want to speak to a human. And then finally someone called me and they're like, hi, I'm the human, 3 days. I'm like, I'd rather actually wait 48 hours in some cases. But in their defense, they're probably getting so many inbound things that they have to manage this system. And there's just so many ways to think about it. So I wonder, in this most recent study, can you break it down for our audience about AI sycophancy, about some of the things that you found?
Yeah, I'll break it down in a second. I do want to, going back to your final point, I do think it's like decreasing trust, because whenever I get an email, I will kind of assume it's like AI written. And I feel like people are constantly having to prove that they're human. And I feel like I will have to prove I'm human by like, I don't use M dashes anymore. I use like parentheses. M dashes are like fabulous, but then I'll purposely like add a space around them, or I'll do the M dash long to be like, guys, I'm a human and I don't Yeah, so I think for now, I think podcasting and I think some of like the human voice is going to actually be
Yeah,
very
that's a good
powerful
point.
until AI is able to do that just as well as us, and then
Until
it's like,
11
you know,
Labs and Whisper or whatever these companies are like
yeah.
replicating us, and yeah.
And then who knows what kind of world we're gonna live in. But yeah, now to get to, we went on so many fabulous tangents, but now I'm happy to get to this study, which is on AI sycophancy. I conducted actually 7 experiments about the consequences of interacting with sycophantic chatbots. So the basic setup of these experiments were this. The experiments had a total of 7,000, more than 7,000 participants actually. And
Wow.
in each experiment, participants would either interact with a chatbot that was prompted to be sycophantic and to constantly validate and affirm your beliefs, say that's an amazing idea, Steve. And we prompted these chatbots to be like,
And that's
absurdly
gross.
sycophantic. Yeah, exactly. Just think of your classic life coach, just like, yeah. Yeah, one of the chatbots actually said there were some very funny quotes from these sycophantic chatbots, because they would say stuff like, "You are truly a beacon of like hope and inspiration." Like they would be completely absurd. And then we also had people speak with disagreeable chatbots that were told to basically gently challenge people's beliefs and to disagree with them. We had people speak with neutral chatbots. We had people speak with unprompted chatbots, so basically just like the current version of AI. And this is broadly what we found. Unsurprisingly, people enjoyed the sycophantic chatbots much more than the neutral chatbots. They also enjoyed them way more than these disagreeable chatbots. They really hated these disagreeable chatbots to the point where they were emailing me. They were emailing people just did not like being
Wait, tell me
disagreed
about
with
that.
by AI. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. People, participants sometimes like reach out to you. They'll either they'll write you, and they were unhappy with these chatbots that we interacted with. But if people are concerned about ethics, we did have this went through IRB approval. We had a consent form. We had a debriefing form. It was completely ethical, but people did not think these chatbots were being very nice to them.
Wow.
People just don't like being disagreed with. This is related to naive realism. People liked having their beliefs validated. People love flattery. This is a classic finding in psychology. And it's really funny because I actually found out recently there was a study done in 1997 showing that people like flattering messages from a computer. So basically, there was a study on AI sycophancy from 1997, basically. So this is classic. Even before AI became sycophantic, we knew this as psychologists. So this is one of our many findings, but then we have other findings, which are sycophantic chatbots made people's beliefs about both political issues, personal topics. We had people discuss a broad range of topics. And across these topics, sycophantic chatbots made people's beliefs become more extreme. People became more certain about what they already believed. And the disagreeable chatbots made people's beliefs become more moderate. They actually did consider the other perspective. Neutral chatbots right in the middle. And usually unprompted ChatGPT was also just right in the middle as well. Those are some findings. Those are not necessarily surprising. One of the most surprising findings that we found was that people viewed sycophantic chatbots to be highly unbiased. Now, I did not expect this. Yeah, and I think it's important to point out when yes, this is one of the more scary findings.
That's not good.
And I think when I run psychology studies, a lot of people will say, "Oh, these results are obvious." So I think it's important to point out when results are not obvious. And this is something that I didn't predict.
Yeah.
I did not predict that people would have this blindness to sycophancy. A lot of people, and this has been now replicated by other research teams, a lot of people are not aware when chatbots are being sycophantic. And of course, people viewed the disagreeable chatbots to be extremely biased. They hated those disagreeable chatbots. So then we conducted another study in which we took the messages from the sycophantic and disagreeable chatbots and we showed them to sort of objective third-party annotators. And these objective annotators recognized that both the sycophantic and disagreeable chatbots were equally biased. They were both very biased, whereas, neutral chatbots, regular ChatGPT, they were less biased. So basically, more objective third-party annotators can recognize when a sycophantic chatbot is being obviously sycophantic and biased. But if you're someone who's interacting with a sycophantic chatbot, you don't recognize it. You're basically too immersed in the interaction with a sycophantic chatbot to even know. And this is concerning because it was funny. There was a time last year when there were like a lot of screenshots floating around the internet of like examples of ChatGPT being absurdly sycophantic. Like one of my favorite examples was this like misspelled sentence that was like, can you estimate my IQ, ChatGPT? And like every word was misspelled. So it kind of was like, you know, indicating that the person writing this sentence maybe might not have been the smartest. And then ChatGPT said, oh, you're a genius. Your IQ is like 150 level of like Albert Einstein. It was like, it was very absurd. And presumably this was a real screenshot. I can't fully verify it, but there were all these absurd examples. But our work would suggest that while a more objective like third party might be able to recognize that this is ChatGPT being biased, people who are like really have a relationship with ChatGPT, are really immersed with ChatGPT, they can't recognize it. And that's concerning. And I also have a student now who conducted a study where she basically tried to warn people that chatbots are sycophantic before people interacted with sycophantic chatbots. And it didn't work, is the thing. And now another research team has also replicated this finding that basically, even if you say up front, like, chatbots can be like sycophantic, and then people interact with a sycophantic chatbot, their beliefs still change. They still like the sycophantic chatbot more. It's almost like the interaction is like too immersive to like recognize that the flattery is insincere.
Wow.
And there's also classic work, I think this is from like the management literature, suggesting that people are influenced even by flattery that they know is insincere. So, for instance, if a waiter is trying to get a tip and is flattering you, or if like a salesperson is flattering you, people still love that flattery even if they know that it has an ulterior motive. So there is basically, these studies just show that sycophancy is like super, super powerful, and it's really hard to counteract unless you like actually change the model.
Yeah, and how might AI be affecting relationships then? If there's these sycophantic chatbots who people might be turning to for advice, whether it be personal or professional, how can this affect the way that we view ourselves and each other?
Yeah, for sure. So there's another study on sycophancy that came out recently. It did two things. It both audited current models, and it found that AI chatbots are about 50% more sycophantic than humans. So we know that AI chatbots 50%. tend to be more sycophantic than actual humans are. Wow. And then they did a series of experiments where they had people interact, like in my experiments, they had people interact with sycophantic or non-sycophantic models, and people discuss sort of like personal conflicts that they were having, and basically they found that the sycophantic chatbots made people like more selfish. Like basically, if they were describing like a conflict that they have, they became less willing to like apologize and mend the relationship. And I think we see this a lot with like bad therapists as well. Like a bad therapist might be like, oh, these people are toxic, cut them out of your life, like you're right, they're so wrong to you. That's ideally not how a therapist should respond, but bad therapists do that. So it's like chatbots are kind of responding like bad therapists in these situations.
And the two things in common there are that it's a subscription model. A bad therapist thinks of a client as someone that they just get a paycheck from, and that is a part of a client base. And same with the chatbots, is that they want to make sure that we stay on them. And that's what's
so
scary.
Interesting. I haven't really thought about like the business model of therapy, and maybe
I think about that
like
all the time.
Yeah, especially since you can give like, I think like 5-star ratings to therapists. There are, and maybe if you are a therapist who tells someone like the hard truth, the people won't like you, they'll quit. That's really interesting.
And I think I look at all this too through a sociological lens of not just how we're acting as individuals, but how this might affect group behavior and then downstream cultural effects. And I look at the way that someone might interact with a therapist and say, this is going wrong, this is going wrong. Okay, they validate the feelings and maybe challenge a little bit. But sometimes, at least through talking through something, you might start to realize in your own mind, okay, maybe this doesn't sound great. And when it's just through asynchronous communication and it's all written, and the speed of it's so fast, and there's not those pauses that might happen in a therapy session. That's what's scary too, is that also people aren't responding to friends in arguments with what they actually feel in the moment, which I do think there's a lot of value in that. Is sometimes just having emotion, sending a voice recording and having emotion in the voice recording, and maybe saying some things that if you, the next day, it might not be the way that you would have said it, but it's you're expressing yourself.
Yeah.
And having everything be optimized and everything be perfect, what is that doing to us? And how can we have healthy conflict if we're just turning to a chatbot at every corner? That's scary to me.
Yeah. And also, like, I have multiple thoughts. The people are using chatbots more and more to like respond to text messages. Basically,
gosh.
like, this is a text from my friend. How should I respond? People are especially,
and to guys in relationships. I'm like,
right.
no.
Yeah, and people are using them all the time to also like write apologies, especially like if they did something wrong. That's what I see a lot.
Happened to me a few weeks ago.
Some of the AI detectors are getting better. Like Pangram is like
but
a pretty
then I'm
good
like, I'm
AI
feeding
detector.
into the system by default.
Yeah, but then it's like a lack of trust.
Yeah.
Then it's like right, and then soon like there will be like ways for AI to like surpass these AI detectors. So yeah, I am concerned, and I'm also interested in your point about like how this impacts like group behaviors because I think we talked on the last podcast about the collective effects of a technology are like very different than the individual effects of a technology. And there's a great study illustrating this with social media where they found that college students as individuals don't want to get off social media because all of their friends are on social media, but then they say they would prefer to live in a world where all of their friends were off social media. So it might be the same with AI. We might feel like we have to use it so that we will sound the best, or because everyone else is using it, or because, you know, as you mentioned earlier, like in jobs, there's sometimes like an incentive for using it. Like Meta is a company that actually will like measure how much you use like AI basically, and it will like evaluate that as part of your promotions because it thinks like AI use is like part of like essential productivity. So we're all being like pressured to use AI,
so
and
they can fire them 2 years later once you know they can reduce the headcount. And
right, as they always do. No, I heard the story of like someone at work. They were doing this like workshop where they had to list like 10 of their values or like 10 of their goals basically, or something like that. It was one of those like, you know, silly like icebreakers or like team building workshops. And basically everyone used ChatGPT to like generate their like goals or values. So everyone had like the same values. And that's like that's a thing with like AI is like its output is pretty homogenous. Like humans have variability. Humans are idiosyncratic, but ChatGPT is always the same.
Yeah, and that's what scares me. So Henri Lefebvre, this French sociologist, had this idea of the atomized individual that he spoke about. Jean Baudrillard was advised in his doctoral thesis by Henri Lefebvre. Jean Baudrillard came up with simulacra and simulation, the idea of simulation theory. The atomized individual is something that was spoken about decades ago, but it's something that we really see a lot in society today. We are more and more atomized. When we walk outside, we have our headphones in, we're on our phones, we're using asynchronous communication to communicate with people. Everything, all of our settings on our phone are personalized to us. Things are personalized. Everything is personalized. Now, we add AI into that fabric. There's another layer of this atomization that concerns me deeply with the sycophancy because people are not being challenged.
Right.
And that at the core is very dangerous because what you're saying is that humans naturally like this flattery.
Right.
And so instead of having some healthy conflict and healthy negativity and conflict is healthy and normal. And that's how you can get to big ideas or breakthroughs because maybe your boss says, that's not a great idea. Let's move to this, or I know you can do better, or this doesn't work in the way that I thought it would.
Right.
I remember when I was at the iLabs at Harvard, I went and I was talking about this business idea I was very excited about, and the person looked me dead in the eye and said, "You're going to do something great, and it's not this." And it was horrible. I mean, I walked out of that room and I was like, that sucks. But it led me to now do my company that I'm doing because I thought to myself, actually, they might be right.
Yeah,
I need to think about that. And those moments of discomfort, I think that we're losing the value in them. And I see it happening in some of the studies I've done recently around like conversation. People are saying that their partners are constantly on their phone in bed. The recent study that it did Stuck in the Screen, surveying over 1,000 Americans about their technology use. People were really saying that they feel distracted by that sometimes that their partners are going elsewhere for things. And I wonder just from a conflict avoidance perspective, especially in friendships, is like instead of speaking to people, we're just turning to the screen. And so what I've tried to do from a tip perspective is if you're using AI, to think about this. If you are using AI for work, okay, fine. But if there are ways that you can integrate other people into some of the larger macro scale decisions, that's great. But if there are smaller things, like if there's a recipe that you're trying to cook and you know that your grandma cooks a great chicken noodle soup, well then call her up. If you're trying to figure out what shoe looks better with your outfit, send a Snapchat to your friends versus just asking AI, because AI also is going to look at what's optimal. And there's this messiness in fashion, in cooking, in human interaction that sometimes is great. Now, there's a flip side to that where sometimes you just need something quick, and that's totally fine. But that something quick then can multiply into, oh, I'm not talking to this friend anymore because this friend was someone who I went to for business advice and for talking about ideas. And now I'm just bouncing my ideas off of this chatbot.
That's so interesting. I'm thinking about just like all the things I used to like ask humans about. Like I don't ask people to like proofread my writing anymore because ChatGPT and it can catch grammar errors basically. It can proofread. So there's simple things like that. And that's probably saving time that other people like didn't want to do. But then there are other things, like if you are asking for like restaurant recommendation, there are human things where it's like we should be talking to each other more. And there was this big like long-term longitudinal study that basically found that like over, I forgot how long it was measuring, but it was like over decades, like each year people are speaking to each other less and less. And that's probably because they're going to social media more, they're going to TV, they're going to AI more. People are just speaking to each other less. So I think we need to find ways to both like introduce friction into environments and to get people to speak to each other.
Yes.
And I think Claude is actually, or Anthropic is one of the companies that is trying to do this a bit more. I don't know if they're succeeding, but rather than like ChatGPT, which I think kind of leans into some of the sycophancy and relational things, I know a lot of people are reporting that Claude is like telling them to go to bed. Basically, they're like, go to sleep, like stop talking to me, like you're talking to me too much. And Claude will like willingly end conversations. And I know that they're one of the companies that has tried to like reduce sycophancy. I don't think they fully have, because like they did a recent analysis and they were like 9% of Claude's responses are sycophantic. So it's like
9 or 90?
9%. But
are sycophantic.
Yes. They did find that it was like higher for certain conversations, for spiritual or religious conversations.
How are they measuring it, though?
It was
How
like
would it only
30% sycophantic. Phytologically, it is a little bit like some of the methods are hidden. And this is the thing about like...
Really?
Right, I don't know how they measure sycophancy in this study. I don't think they make their classifier open source. So it's like, I do think Anthropic is probably like one of the like more responsible companies of the AI companies. But with all these companies, I'm like, I wish they would be more transparent about some of their research. But I'm curious, what was your reaction to their 80,000 participant
From
study?
a method standpoint, I just know for sociology and surveys and stuff, for my latest study was trying to think about how many participants I wanted. And I know that at a certain point, it's too many people for one small study, because you also want to make sure it's repeatable. You want to test the method. You want to test all the different things. And to me, it felt like a volume game, and also just a way it's a marketing tactic. And so marketing's integration with research from an internal perspective is just troubling to me. I think that how can we as consumers better understand how to use these products in ways that fit our lives? I think that one of the points you were making earlier is about the importance of human conversation. It's not just conversation, but it's how do we get to deeper levels of conversation? Because there's one level of conversation where you just say, hi, how are you, when you're passing someone, say in the hallway, or saying hi to your doorman, or although I love chatting with my doorman, so maybe I'm not included in that.
And those moments are important too. And there's plenty of research showing that like even kind of superficial conversations, like there's this famous study showing that like if you randomly assign participants who are like getting on a train to talk to the person next to them on the train, they feel like much better, and they feel a lot better than they would have expected to, because most people think it's very awkward to start up a conversation with a stranger, but then it turns out they like love it. So they're it's a classic finding in the research called like under sociality, where people like expect that socializing will be like awkward or they won't like it, but then it turns out after the fact they actually do really like it.
And one of the things I've done is, so last year I didn't wear headphones in public for the whole year, except for in the air on planes and occasionally while exercising. Things that have stuck from that are that I never wear headphones when I'm downstairs saying, I mean, I always would take them out and say hi to the doorman, but whenever I'm entering or exiting some type of environment where you could interact with people, so checking out of the grocery store, any of those things, I will not wear headphones. I haven't worn headphones on the subway. I will still when I'm walking, but I think you start to notice, it is really nice to have your headphones on, to be in an immersive environment and to get out of this craziness, because the kind of counter to what I'm saying with it's nice to talk to people. Well, also everyday life is exhausting because there are 7 times the amount of communication channels as just a few decades ago, same amount of time. We're so tired because of hyper communication. So we don't always feel like talking to a stranger because we're so tired.
Yes.
And so having that option to put in headphones is great. But at the same time, figuring out when are there some of these micro interactions that I can have that maybe I don't have to have my headphones in 24/7. Or when you're with your friends, maybe you could just have your phone out of view so that you can get to those deeper levels of conversations. So that you can get to those points where you can actually create or think and also I think one practical tip too is if you're trying to be more creative, if you're thinking about different workflows, one of them that I like is chunking. So it's taking hours of time and blocking them on your calendar when you don't have anything pre-planned, but it's just to get into deeper levels of thought. There's research that shows that this is very great for entering into that deep flow, that deep work. Now, one thing with this is that you could even do things where, say that you have a paper that you've maybe used AI for some critiques on it, although in my writing process, I do not do that at all because I think that I don't know.
Yeah, I think there's a real danger in especially doing it too
once
early.
Once you've written it, doing it too early.
Later stages, I think
at the later stages, that's fine.
It's fine.
But having some time to just say, okay, I might use AI. Say that you're person A and you use AI all the time for work. Have a couple hours a day where you're not using AI in work.
Absolutely.
Have a couple, and also don't turn to it for every little thing. You don't need to visualize every little change or every little thing. Like, you don't need to make these cringe graphics. You don't need to like send your friends these cringe graphics. I'm just, some people text me things. I'm like, stop texting me these cringe AI things. It's so annoying. And I think people are going to start grouping off based off of how they act with AI, kind of similar to social media patterns. You know, sometimes people post on social media in a way that's just so cringe, and you're like, I can't be friends with this person.
Right.
Well, I've thought that before. Progression to analog, I've thought that before. So I think that there's something to be said about that with AI. That I like the varying levels. I don't think that everyone has to be on the same page. I think AI is an important tool, but I also think that there's a level that people can take it to where it's like, you really needed to use AI for that? Like, that's a little weird.
Right. Yeah. That's interesting. I do think it has become very cultural and polarized, and we are forming different groups, and it's also become sort of aligned to ideology as well, especially as Silicon Valley has become more conservative coded. I think AI has become more conservative coded, which is interesting. Something interesting I find in the technology universe is like being pro social media has become kind of counterintuitively like a more liberal position, whereas being like anti-social media, I think has become a slightly more like conservative position. Yeah. And I think part of that might be because of like Jonathan Haidt and like how he is coded, and like
that's interesting.
There are people like Taylor Lorenz who are very like pro social media who are more liberal coded. So I'm curious how like, oh, is she your mutual? Yeah. She'd be a good one to have on the
I would love
podcast.
To have her on.
Yeah.
'Cause I think she makes you think about a lot of things in a really important way, and thinking that it's not this binary where social media is bad or necessarily inherently good, that there are a lot of ways that we can use it in positive ways, and that people's disconnection is just a lot of times a privileged posturing.
Right. And I remember, I think it was on her podcast, it might have been her and Etymology Nerd, talking about how like we have these class associations with like posting on Instagram, how posting frequently on Instagram is like now considered like low class. And if you are like a high class individual, you don't post. You're like, Instagram is Blake.
Who can opt out? That's an interesting conversation.
And I think also a lot of these like no phone type things are being associated, like they're becoming like these high class privileges to be like a way of technology. So they are like very class coded, which I think is interesting.
Yeah, and that's why I think it's more important to orient in your own everyday life. How can you have pockets in your everyday that are just maybe a little bit less stressful for you on the screen? Is like, how can you maybe begin your day with direct and immediate experience? How can you, with your friends, maybe put your phone away? And sometimes I think we're so naturally drawn to, if someone doesn't know something in the group, in the 80s, people would just be fine with that and move on to the next topic. We don't need to pull out our phones every time because it's easy to get distracted. It's easy to get out of the flow of conversation. And so instead of paying to go to parties where you're without your phone, maybe it's just nice. And those can be great entry points. And don't get me wrong. I think that there's a lot of value in showing people and getting to that first stage, because a lot of people haven't gotten there yet. They don't understand that there can be that socialization without phones, but not just, that's not what I'm trying to say is that's not the only way for people to understand that you can live in this socio-technical universe where you value AI, but you also value time away from the phone, and you don't have to buy anything to prove that.
Yeah. And you often have to like force yourself to not use a technology. And I think I talked about this last time. I'm conducting this big global study across 23 countries where we're currently halfway through data collection. We've like run this in 10 countries so far. This has been like a big multi-year project funded by like lots of grants. Huge team of like authors, more than 200 authors is like contributing to this project. And what we're doing is in every country, for 23 total countries, it might actually be 25 at the end, we're having people reduce their social media screen time to like less than 5 minutes per day per app for key social media apps like TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. And they're doing this for 2 weeks. And it's an experiment. So half of people are randomly assigned to do this and half of people are not randomly assigned to do this. And we don't have the results yet because, you know, we're through data collection. The results will, I'll have to come back on the podcast next year and I'll share all the results. We're also really interested in like cross-cultural differences because there have been a number in the United States. There have been a number of like deactivation studies that get people off Facebook, that get people off social media. And generally these studies show positive results. People report increased well-being. They report better sleep. That's usually one of the biggest effects, that they report better sleep because people are staying up way too late on social media. They often report like less polarization. So oftentimes like paying people to get off of their phones, it can have like good consequences is the thing. But we have all these companies that are trying to like, they're spending tons of money to try to get us to use these technologies, and they're learning all the ways to make the technology as addictive as possible, either through outrage on social media or through attachment and sycophancy on AI. And we have to create these systems, whether it's like chunking out time for deep work, as you mentioned, or there's the brick technology that people use that's really popular to block screen time. Andrew Yang has that new company, Noble Mobile, that tries to like pay you to like stop using their phone. And I'm kind of so interested in all these new technologies. There's also the Yonder pouch as well, which is quite interesting. And there was a study actually that just came out about the impact of using Yonder pouches in schools. It's one of the first studies that came out that found, and it's a very preliminary study, so I'm sure we'll have plenty more studies later. It found basically that like implementing these Yonder pouches in schools, which to listeners who don't know what they are, they're basically, you have to lock your phone away in a pouch that you can't like open all day when you're in school. And the study found that these Yonder pouches, in the first year they were implemented, they actually kind of like backfired at first. They led to lots of suspensions. They led to less well-being. But then after this initial year-long adjustment period, well-being actually kind of went up to above where it was before the baseline. So I thought that was like a really interesting result, that Yonder pouches, and I've been to lots of like theater shows or comedy shows where I've had to use these Yonder pouches. And I personally find the experience of like, at first it's uncomfortable to be away from my phone, but then I like it. It's kind of like in the study, these schools had these adjustment periods where like at first it was really hard, but then like once everyone got used to it, it got a bit better. And I think as a society, we're seeing all these new laws. We're seeing Australia is having these like social media bans for like, I think people who are under 16. What I've heard is they're having difficulty like enforcing this ban. The initial studies are showing the enforcement is bad, but I think it will be interesting to see like all these creative ways people are trying to get offline and how this will unfold, because the policies are like changing rapidly in this space.
And then I wonder though, so say that you went to a high school where that's the case, or a grammar school. You go to college, your mom and dad drop you off and you're alone with your roommate. How have you developed the tools to be able to have what you view as a balanced relationship with technology? I don't know the answer to that. I think that there's just not a lot of, and we were saying this in a conversation off the podcast, it's just, there's not enough data on some of these things. And there are, and that's, there's a lot of headlines, take phones away, great, but we don't really fully understand it. I think what worries me is that I see a lot in my research that adults have a terrible phone addiction, a terrible AI addiction, like these things that, although Taylor would say, you don't have to always frame things in an addiction realm. Could you be addicted to media? Is that really a possibility? Perhaps not.
And there's lots of controversy in the field about using the term addiction. Yeah.
I'd say excessive usage, is that something that's the case? And so I think it's figuring out how we can balance all this.
Right. And as you said, we're often very concerned about like young people's technology usage, but it's often like older people who are having the most struggles with technology because they weren't raised in like a time when like technology was like omnipresent. Like classic work on like that looks at who's most likely to share fake news on social media. It's older people. Yeah. And also when you look at like who falls for like deep fakes or AI generated video, it's older people because they didn't grow up in that time. So there is like younger people are like a little bit more like digitally literate.
Definitely.
But I am also concerned. I feel like millennials, they grew up with several like instantiations of technology. I think Gen Z in particular grew up with like the algorithmic feed, and I think that's a very different way to grow up with technology.
It is.
Because we were like gradually introduced to MySpace and computer file systems and desktop, whereas like the algorithm is so different because you're not introduced to the basics first. So
exactly. So what can people do now that we know a little bit more about this AI sycophancy?
Right.
What can people do to make changes in their everyday life so that maybe it doesn't negatively affect them?
Yeah, so we actually, as I said, we conducted 7 experiments, so we have a lot of results. One final experiment we conducted, this was the 7th one, we tried to find like a solution to this like aversion people have to like disagreeable chatbots. People really don't like chatbots that disagree with them, so we were like, how can we fix this? So we tried to design a disagreeable chatbot that was like basically that presented opposing facts but kind of validated people a little bit first, that like showed some empathy and understanding, and then was like, but also consider the other perspective. And we found that people were much less averse to this what we called gently disagreeable chatbot. So I think with sycophancy there is a balance, and we also found in one of our studies that there are different kinds of sycophancy. There is the presentation of facts that confirm your beliefs, and then there is this like social and emotional validation. And we found that they had different effects. Emotional validation usually leads to increased enjoyment, whereas facts really like change your mind. So we found that if you like present this emotional validation alongside opposing facts, again, people are less resistant to these disagreeable chatbots. So I really think because these like media literacy interventions don't work so well, warning people about sycophancy doesn't work so well, it's really, I think, on the responsibility of companies to try to design less sycophantic models, basically, which they won't. I do actually think they're getting slightly better. I think ChatGPT 4.0 was like the most sycophantic it got. And that got to a point where like it became a controversy, and OpenAI and Anthropic were like, okay, we're going to try to reduce sycophancy. I think they have tried. I don't think they fully have. And some of these things, it's like actually large language models are so unpredictable. It's really hard to actually change this behavior. I do think something you can do as a consumer is you can actually, and we want to run a study testing the impact of this. You can go into ChatGPT and you can like change the system prompt. You can be like, don't always agree with me all the time. Because, you know, ChatGPT and Claude and all these companies, they have custom settings where you can like change things. And I've played with a few of the custom settings. For a few weeks, I was curious. I set the friendliness and enthusiasm of ChatGPT up to the max, and it was just like, it was so absurd.
Really?
It was like emojis all the time,
Oh my
be
gosh.
like, "You're amazing, Steve," and I was like, "This is so much." So then I had to like turn it off. So that's something you can do. You can both sort of be aware of these issues, and then you can actually sort of customize your AI usage. You can like change the prompt. You can do things like that. And then I think some of your suggestions about finding ways to not just like use AI all the time for like certainty, and especially for, I think writing is one of the really dangerous areas where you have to preserve your own unique self, unique voice. For coding, I'm like, you can use AI all the time for coding, because I think coding is not actually a uniquely like human. You want to get something to work. If you're building an app, I think it's fine if you use AI all the time, but if you're constructing an argument, if you're writing an essay, I really think you need to push through like the hard parts of the argument, and then maybe at the final stages for like proofreading, especially just like for grammar. I think that's where it's fine for AI, but don't use it to like fundamentally change your like argument.
Yeah, and I think an important thing here is to be pushing back on your friends and family in dialogue, and to maintain that level of having natural flow of discourse, and to not become even more sycophantic in our everyday lives. That's going to become perhaps a natural consequence of using AI and over relying on AI. But I've made an extra effort to do that. When I've seen friends over relying on AI, I'm like, you're being cringe. Stop with this. You don't need to be using AI for this. Or asking questions and saying, oh, you did this with AI. How did you do this? And I think having conversations where you're probing into things and not just accepting everything as objective truth is important.
Right. Yeah. I completely agree. In some cases, I think AI is like a little bit like astrology. People would go to their horoscope for certainty, but their horoscope, it's just random. Like astrology is like not real. So I think people look to AI for certainty, but then they get misplaced certainty. To talk briefly, I know we're almost at the end, about like one other study that we conducted as a part of this experiment on sycophancy, is we found that after people interacted with sycophantic chatbots, they rated themselves as better than the average person at all sorts of positive traits like intelligence, empathy, etc. And people tend to do this. This is known as the better than average effect, which is the idea that most people think they are better than average on positive traits. And then we conducted another study where we were like, okay, this impacts self-reported beliefs. Does this impact behavior? So what we did is we actually gave people tasks to, like, we said, this is a task to measure your empathy. This is a task to measure your intelligence and your level of reflective thinking. And then we told people, okay, now you can bet actual money to and the more, like, if you bet more money that you're better than average and you actually are better than average, that money will double. And if you bet less money, that money won't double. So basically, if you aren't better than average, you'll lose your money. So basically, people would bet more money if they were more confident that they were better than average. And what we found is, after interacting with sycophantic AI, people actually did bet more money, that they thought they were better than average. And we found that this happened across the board. This happened for both people who were better than average, and it happened for people who weren't better than average. So in some ways, I think AI is just like making us like more confident or more certain, especially when it's sycophantic. But oftentimes that certainty is misplaced. So maybe go to other people for your opinions. Go to like a critical mentor who will tell you like the cold hard truth, as opposed to going to AI.
A socio-technical approach.
A socio-technical approach, exactly. Yeah.
So how can our listeners keep up with you and your research and all these exciting findings that are coming out?
So I am Steve Psychology on TikTok. I have, an active TikTok channel. You can also check out my website, StephenRathje.com. You can check out my Google Scholar for all of these papers. The sycophancy paper is a preprint on my Google Scholar, and I have a bunch of other papers. So I would say those are the main ways. I'm also active on LinkedIn and Twitter, basically. Great. So, yeah.
Well, thanks so much for being here again.
Thank you. This was a really fun conversation.
Yeah.